with that persona and everything, people kind of thought I was just a dumb jock, a dumb Polak at first. So I kind of played into that character sometimes, not all times, but when it was necessary. And then I go in, I answer everything I need to answer. I do everything I need to do. I knock it out of the park. And they're just sitting there like, oh man, like, dang, this guy legit.
Rob Gronkowski, thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, Justin, thank you for having me, man.
So when most people retire, they tend to slow down, take it easy. Feels like you're busier than ever. How do you make that all work?
When people usually retire, they're about 75, 70 years old, 80 years old. I retired from the game of football at the age of 29 and at the age of 32. And that's not an age to truly retire from life and just sit back. I believe in balance big time. I believe that you should really, truly never stop working. Maybe not a full-time schedule, 24/7, 7 days a week. But I like that true balance of having 3 days on, 4 days off, or 4 or 5 days on, 2, 3 days off. It seems like I'm really, really busy because a lot of it has to do with television commercials and being on TV. What kind of daunts on me a little bit is the travel. You gotta pick and choose your battles with the game of travel. Flying in an airplane, every single day gets tough. Your immune system starts to break down a little bit. And I truly believe health is wealth. And if you got your health, you got everything in life. So I always put my health first. When I start getting run down a little bit, I like to take a break, what's going on in my life, just so I can get home. And also, I don't really plan my schedule anymore to have it, fully booked, because I really do like to take care of my health. So I'm always feeling good when the opportunities come and when I got to present myself to a crowd or whatever I'm doing.
So what's your routine look like generally then? Obviously you mentioned traveling a lot. Where are you spending most of your time? How often are you actually in studio working, doing this or that?
It's all over the place. I got so many different jobs. It's unbelievable. And that's also why people think I'm just such a busy guy as well, because they see me doing so many different, activations or activities or campaigns or whatever it is. But my schedule when I'm downtime, which I love my downtime, that's when I really work out hard. I build up my strength, I build up my body, so then I can go on a 10-day bender of travel and work and feel strong throughout those 10 days. Because when I'm working every single day and I'm traveling a lot, I don't really like to work out as hard, because then you can get beat down, you got to recover. So I really like to get those workouts in, because I've been working out my whole entire life and playing sports my whole entire life. So it's just within me still to this day to stay in shape. It's just what I do, and it's what I've been doing my whole entire life. So those workouts, boom, when I'm home for 3 to 4 days, I hit those hard. I hit the sauna hard. I get massages, so I can stay relaxed, stress-free. And then boom, I go and hit the road hard. I land in LA. I sometimes, shoot a commercial for 2 days straight, and then go do a speaking gig, that's possibly an hour away from LA, or right in LA, or on my way to LA, make a pit stop and do the speaking gig. So it varies all over the place, my schedule, and just never know what's going to pop up as well. So that's why I also don't like to stay fully booked, because if something great pops up that's within 5 days, I tend to like to have the opportunity to decide if I can do it or not.
So when you're evaluating all these opportunities, these business deals, what are you looking for? What stands out to you? Why do you cast the net so wide?
Yes, well, back in the day, when I first got in the NFL, you kind of tend to take any opportunity that's presented to you. And that's when you learn, that's when the growing pains happen. You're like, oh my gosh, this sounds great. This person's paying me this much. I don't even know what the product is. I don't even know how they're using me, how they're utilizing me, how they're marketing me. It's just like you're looking at the dollar sign and you think it's glorious because you're just getting out of college. You're 22, 23, 24 years old. And then in the long run, you kind of realize that didn't work out. It wasn't sustainable. The dollar amount didn't really make sense. I was representing a product that was who knows what. That really didn't work. And I wasn't there for the consumer, that was consuming that product and who we were marketing to. So I tend to, I tended to learn all of my mistakes when I was young, just like anybody else in life. And you got to go through life to understand, what mistakes are. And now I truly love to focus on things that, that represent me, that I love to wear. Say for a clothing brand, I'm not going to represent a clothing brand unless if I love to wear it. A shoe brand, I'm not going to represent a shoe brand unless if I love to wear it, and so on with everything else. And I got so many endorsements from a shoe brand, from a clothing brand. I'm with Wolf and Shepherd. I'm with Built Basics with the clothing brand, all the way to FanDuel. It just fits the mold, and they're a fun company as well. And then there's just so many other things that play in the factor. Sometimes it's the paycheck as well still. The money can represent, why I'm going to represent a company. Even if I tend to not use that company as much as I do with others, but if the paycheck's right and it fits my brand of like a high-end company, a company that's going to utilize me in the right way by marketing me in the right way, it tends to settle in and be a nice fit as well.
How often are you turning things down?
I turn a lot down. I would say, because people sometimes come up to me like, dude, how do you do everything? You don't turn down anything. I'm like, I literally turn down probably about, if everything hit my desk, I would say I turn down about 95% of the things. Really? But the people that represent me aren't going to just bring everything to my desk and say, hey, you want to do this? Hey, you want to do this? They already know ahead of time, hey, we're not even going to present this to Rob because it's already going to be a no. But say like things that are big that make sense for myself, I would say I turn down about 50% of the offers then, because it gets overwhelming. It really does. I don't want to be overused as well. I don't want to be oversaturated in the market, which can easily be done. But about 50% of what is presented, I just thank them, for thinking about me, which is amazing that these offers are coming in. I'm able to turn them down because I have so many others that I'm already with.
What's the strangest thing you've ever done?
Oh, the strangest thing I've ever done? Like, as in like a company I represented?
Endorsement, business deal, investment, anything.
Investment wise. Oh man. I kind of got duped with this like emoji. Like, those emojis, like all the smiley faces and all that. Yeah. Like, that one was strange. Yeah. Okay. That one was strange. It sounded really good at the time because that's when like it was all taking off. Like Snapchat was taking off and you were sending smiley faces and text messages. So like you thought emojis, that's what they're called. So it was kind of like emoji, and like I got involved and like it just wasn't going anywhere. And I really realized that like after the first week, and I was like, crap, like how do I get out of this? But I couldn't. And then eventually I got out of it. But it was weird. You got to do your homework definitely before you sign onto something, especially when it's going to be a big campaign and it's representing who you are too. So I really like, to work with the big high-end companies that are established already, that kind of like are winners, that already won some Super Bowls just like myself.
That's funny. So you turned pro at 20. When does this idea of, doing business off the field come? Like as a young player, I'm sure establishing yourself in the NFL is probably the number one thing on your mind, but when did you start thinking about like, okay, endorsements, business, managing my money? When does that come into your mind?
I would say right off the bat, obviously football was my first priority and was always my first priority when I was playing the game. I mean, it has to be, just how grueling the schedule is, just how much you got to take care of yourself, your mind, your body, physically. So football was always first. And if it ever got to the point where I was doing too much off the field, like I noticed my football play started going down, and that was a bad thing. That was going to ruin all of my chances off the field, because I learned as well a nice little lesson is that, hey, if I'm performing out on the football field, well, then everything off the field is going to take care of itself. And those opportunities are going to be presented to me. So as I was, becoming bigger in the NFL, more established, I kind of had a good feel for, what was going on, because I was taking little deals right from the beginning. I always had that brain power to want to take deals as well, and understand what's going on and be business savvy as well as a football player. My dad's been in the business world for 35 years, in the fitness industry. You get a marketing team for you when you sign with an agent. So the marketing deals, were always cool. And I loved the marketing deals from the very beginning. Yeah. And one guy that I always looked up to was Doug Flutie. I'm from Buffalo. When he was on the Buffalo Bills, he had the Fruity Flakes. Flutie Flakes. I said Fruity Flakes because of, but Fruity Pebbles, but Flutie Flakes. And that was just so cool. Like when I was just a kid and I was pouring a bowl of cereal, right in front of my face, and it was Doug Flutie on the box. Like I thought that was the coolest thing, ever. So that's kind of like when my mind started triggering, like, oh, that could be me one day if I make it big.
You famously have said that you never spend any of your game checks. Lived off your endorsement money, put that stuff away. So two parts to that. One, is that still the case? And two, what did you do with that money? How did you grow that?
Yes. Well, how I managed to do that is that my agent gave me a $50,000, upfront marketing fee. Like marketing check.
In advance. Yeah.
In advance, marketing advance. Yes, $50,000 advance, for what's going to come in the marketing world for myself. Yeah. And then I just had to pay him back within the first $50,000 I made. So with that $50,000, I was able to, purchase my first car, which was a 2008 Escalade, which was super dope. I absolutely loved it to the T. I loved my Escalade so much. That was my first purchase. And then to be able to pay rent once I got to New England. And then from there on out, I really didn't need any other money. I was getting free meals at the facility. I just kind of needed gas money, I guess. You go out, the drinks are free, or you pay for one, you get 10 free when you're on the Patriots up in the Boston area. So wasn't really spending much money at all. Yeah. Especially when it got to the season. I mean, you're inside that building and everything's handed to you on a daily basis, from breakfast all the way, to dinner. So I just lived off of my marketing dollars. I had a couple of marketing gigs come in at the very beginning as well. I started scoring touchdowns my rookie year. So, I was out there. So, they were low-level gigs at the time, but I was living a low-level life, I had a condo with a roommate that was on the team as well. We're paying $1,500 a month in rent while in the NFL. I mean, that's nothing, you gotta love it. So I was very frugal, and that's how I got away with it. Yeah. Not having any lavish purchases, the first couple years in the league, and just banking away what I was making, because I truly understood that the NFL, they say that's what it stands for, is not for long, NFL. Yeah. So I understood that, and I wanted to be set when I was done with my career as well. And I wanted to be set if I just played 3-4 years. I was cool with making what I was going to make my rookie year, with my rookie contract, which was $4 million. It was a 4-year, $4 million deal. And I was like, wait, if I play all four, I make $1 million a year. And if I put that in the bank and I just invest a little bit, I can get a return of like $100,000, $150,000. I was like, I'm set for life, but everything took off from there.
You have any business mentors, people who influence you, whether it was in the locker room or other walks of life, that really said, hey, you should be looking at this, looking at that? I'm sure it doesn't hurt sharing a locker room with Tom Brady, who's like one of the great athlete entrepreneurs, but I'm curious, who influenced you? Who taught you kind of the ropes in that regard?
Well, Tom Brady, when I got to the NFL, he didn't really bring bring me through the ropes, but just watching him, go through that, and representing brands and being an ambassador, not just on the field, but off the field. And he was one of the few, one of the select few in the NFL to be able to do that, during his career. There's not many that are great football players, but also a great ambassador for companies and doing commercials. There's only a select few. So just watching him go through the process, you pick up on that. You see what he's doing, how he's doing it, how he's still balling out on the football field. And that's most important to him as well, is making sure he is balling out on the football field. Because if you're not, then all those things off the field aren't going to come anymore. So football was always first. And that's what was huge, is to always put football first. And then my father as well, he put me through the ropes. He was a businessman. He is still a businessman. Deals coming my way, deciphering what I should do, what I shouldn't do, what fits me, all that good stuff. And then my agents helped me out as well. Drew Rosenhaus, when I signed with his team, they brought deals to the table. And then what was most important, I would say, is just going through the experience and learning for yourself. Yeah. You definitely got to do that. It's like going out on that football field and getting whomped by a linebacker and getting absolutely dominated by a defensive lineman. Hey, I got to go back in the lab. I got to go get stronger. I figured it out myself, what I got to do to compete out on that football field. And that's the same thing with deals that were coming my way. Whoa, like I took that one. That one really didn't fit me. I didn't really like that company either. I didn't like working with them. I'm not going to do that again. Or, whoa, that was awesome working with them. I'm going to really, show them I appreciated them, and I'm going to keep, doing my best efforts so I can stick with them and keep growing with them. And that's what I really learned too, as well, is not just one-offs. One-offs are cool, yeah, but they don't, blossom you. One-offs don't, produce how you really want to produce, throughout your whole entire career and after your career, your post-career. When you can stick with a company, for 5, 6, 7 years and multiple companies as well, yeah, that just shows your capabilities. It shows that you're marketable. It shows that you have a strong business behind who you are. Yeah. So that's huge. So one-offs I learned are cool, but what matters most is being able to stick with companies and campaigns for, a generational run.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Flashing back a little bit, in the early days of your career, you kind of cultivated this persona, the wild man, the party boy. I think we've all seen the video, dancing on stage with LMFAO.
Yeah.
You talk to your partners at Nut House, some people at Fox now, and they say that you're not really like that anymore. So how would you describe Rob Gronkowski as who he is today?
Yes, I've definitely grown. There's no doubt about that. And it's something to be proud of too, I was a wild man, from 16 years old all the way to about, 25. And then it started, slowing down a little bit, but I was still a wild man, 26, 27, there and there. And then you feel that affection of going out, not getting a lot of sleep, you're not being able to produce how you want to produce out on the football field. And that persona at the beginning was great because I was a 21-year-old, 22-year-old, 23-year-old badass with a lot of energy. Nothing was taking me down. And it helped me become the player that I was out on the football field too, because that persona was the type of player I was too. I'm going to go out tonight. I'm going to go ham. I'm going to dance with everyone. I'm going to show everyone that I'm the most juiced on the dance floor. And then I'd wake up in the morning and then I'd be like, that same itch that I had going out, I would bring to the weight room. I'm going to go the most ham in the weight room. I'm going to be the strongest guy, in this weight room. And then I'm going to bring it out to the field. No one's going to tackle me. Everything was just full go. I'm going to make this catch. I'm going to make this play. So everything was just full go. And that persona just came to me as well. It wasn't like it was forced. It was just me being me. I would say that my fans, kind of blew up the persona even more than myself because I was just being myself and they all loved it and they would egg it on. And then, once they started egging it on, I would fall for it and I would take it to a whole nother level. But now to this day, you grow up, I can't be going out till 4 a.m. and then wake up at 7 a.m. and try to get everything I need to get done. Like I started hurting a little bit, actually not just a little bit, I started hurting a lot of bit But I still love to have fun. I still love to bring the energy to the table. And when I party, I say I like to party during the day, you know, from morning to night. And then I got to make sure I get my sleep. And every once in a while, you know, you got to throw it back. You got to throw it back to, you know, just keep yourself, keep yourself, I would say.
Feeling young?
Yeah, feeling young. But to show that you still got it as well, you know, to show the young bucks that you're still there, that even though whatever age I am, you know, how many injuries I've ever had, I can still show up when I need to show up.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Do you find that, you know, this reputation that it's preceded you at times, that in some cases people look at you and they're like, oh, Gronk's the wild man party boy. How's he been able to kind of find so much success with business investing, endorsements, business deals? Do you find that people almost underestimate you kind of from the reputation of your earlier in your career?
I would say so. Definitely, you know, throughout the beginnings of my career, you know, like even, you know, going into shoots and like representing a company, like when I first got there, I could tell that they would think I'm like ditzy a little bit, you know? Yeah. And like, I kind of played into it then, you know? And it was kind of how I was on the football field at first as well. You know, I always kind of humbled myself before I ever started anything, because I didn't love to make the expectations up here. I've done that before, and I feel like if the expectations are up here from the very beginning, well, then you can't really succeed the expectations. And that's kind of how I was on the football field as well. I went in, you know, I love to stay humble. You know, I've been, you know, greeted before when I was getting a little cocky, and I've been humbled before out on the football field plenty of times in my life when I thought I was an absolute man, you know, and then boom, you get your knees chopped out of you just like that. And I learned that in the business world as well. But, you know, with that persona and everything, you know, people kind of thought I was just a dumb jock, a dumb Polak at first. It's kind of been like that a little bit throughout my life, because I wouldn't say, you know, I'm a bigger guy. And when bigger guys, you know, are trying to do something, it takes a lot more energy, and sometimes it's slower. You know, so you think big guys are all just big dumb jocks. Sometimes it takes me a little bit longer to figure things out as well, but I always know what's going on around me, and I always knew it too. So I kind of played into that character sometimes, not all times, but when it was necessary. And I love to spin circles around people too, like, oh, this guy is a freaking idiot, you know? And then I go in, you know, I answer everything I need to answer. I do everything I need to do. I knock it out of the park. And they're just sitting there like, oh man, like, dang, this guy legit. Like, I thought he was an idiot. So then, boom, I succeeded expectations right there as well. But I didn't really get bothered by it either, you know, not one single bit, because I truly knew who I am, you know, who I was and who I am. So, you know, that persona or that expectations didn't ever bother me, you know.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because, like, you know, famously, that type of typecasting, like the meathead, the dumb jock or whatever, you know, Tom Brady has this roast and Nikki Glaser comes up there and she's got a Gronk joke in her set, and the first person they show is you laughing. You know, you have kind of this sense of humor and this affability, which I think is rare. So that doesn't bother you? It's kind of like you just laugh your way to the bank in the end?
Yeah, exactly. You know, you laugh your way to the bank. So many people have said that to me before. They're like, yo, Gronk, you got everyone fooled. You're just laughing your way to the bank. And like, I just turn around, like some random people just sometimes come up to me and say that. And I just turn around and I laugh and I'm like, dude, give me some knuckles, baby. But it's a fun persona as well, you know? I would say I like it because you're bringing fun to the table, you know? You're not taking yourself serious. You're lighting up a room when you walk in the room. Because it's not like, oh, Gronk's here, like, oh, everyone's got to be serious. It's like, oh, yeah, we can dance. He's dancing. He's successful. You know, he won Super Bowls. He's always having a good time. He's not uptight. I would say that's more what it's about instead of, you know, and I can handle the jokes, you know. You got to be able to handle the jokes. If I couldn't handle the jokes, I wouldn't be where I am, you know, right now, sitting here doing an interview with you, Justin, for Forbes magazine, which is just incredible.
Yeah. So in 2019, you joined Fox as an NFL analyst. I'm wondering, in post-retirement, was that something you had your eye on? Was that a breakthrough moment for you?
Actually, you're going to be the first person that I've ever told this to. but I rarely ever even watched the pregame show because I was playing the game of football, and our games usually kick off at 1 o'clock, and the pregame show is from 12 to 1. So I rarely ever seen an NFL kickoff show.
Yeah.
You know, every once in a while when I was watching Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football or something because I played in the 1 o'clock game or we had a bye week, you know, I never tend to turn on the pregame show. You know, I always just turned on the game whenever it came on. And when I got myself, you know, into this with Fox, I really didn't know what I was getting into. You know, it was the pregame show. You're going to talk football. Yeah. You know, I've seen a little bit of it. I didn't really know the ins and outs at all. This is what you're going to do. It's kind of going to be more of like a trial at first. It wasn't like I was going to be thrown into the mix big time. And so when I signed up for it, I didn't know exactly what I was even signing up for, you know, to the T, you know. And I kind of just did it because it had to do with football. And I was like, oh, I know football inside and out. Yeah. It was a job as well, you know. I wasn't just going to sit around, just be retired, sit on the couch, not do anything. You know, I like to stay active. I like to keep my brain going, keep utilizing it. So when that opportunity came, you know, I was in for one. And then once I started understanding the ins and outs, I understand, you know, what was going on around me, how everything was done, how TV and production is all done. I started to get into a flow, started to enjoy the process. But even at first, when I made my introduction to the TV world on Thursday Night Football, you know, I started it with a banger. I for sure did when I talked about Julian Edelman and how he always, you know, gets that nut in the end zone. He always finds that nut, and the nut is that football, and he always scores by getting into that end zone. So that was a huge way to start my broadcasting career.
Well, let me ask you, how tough was the learning curve? Because it's not easy to jump into a completely new career. And how'd you get better with it?
Yes. No, it's not, you know. When you got like a one-off that day, when you just got to talk about one little thing, it's easy. But when you have a full day ahead of you, you got to react to the game. You got a list of topics that you got to talk about, and you got to be informative about the topics that you're talking about. And it's not a team that you're familiar with as well, because there's 32 teams in the NFL. There's 53 guys on each team. That's over like 1,500 players that you got to possibly know as well. That's when things get difficult. Talking about the New England Patriots and my teammates that I formerly played with for 10 years, that's easy. Yeah. But to talk about other guys that you really never seen before, that you got to watch some film about them, break them down, you know, that's when it gets a little bit more difficult. So doing the repetitions helped big time. Being around guys like Terry Bradshaw, Jimmy Johnson, you know, Kurt Menefee, who's our host, Michael Strahan, Howie Long, like those guys are pros. And just being around them, seeing how they go about their business, seeing how, you know, they plan right there before we go live on air, and what they do to be prepared as well before they go live on air. I mean, to learn from those guys and just be around them and just pick up a little, you know, ounce or two from them of what to do is just very beneficial and helps out big time.
Yeah, I can imagine. And they did get you a little bit with a prank, though.
Yes.
So it seems like the camaraderie is pretty strong there. Are you planning to get them back in any way? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, and when they got me, it was good. You know, there's when you got in a little extra time on air, and they call it the fifth round. And you're not sure if there's going to be a fifth round or not that day, depending on if everyone went over with how long they were talking for and all that good stuff. And then boom, they're like, okay, fifth round we got. And then they start going off. We're live. And then they just start going off about Rich Russo, how he's just coming back from injury and that, you know, he's going to be on the Dallas Cowboys and all that good stuff. Rich Russo is one of the production managers. He works, you know, with all the cameras and does all that, you know, good stuff. And I didn't know who Rich Russo was. So I didn't know the name. And they knew I wasn't going to know the name. So that was part of the prank as well, me not knowing everybody's name in the building. And that's how it starts. And I just started thinking in my head, like, man, do I belong here? This guy is a tight end for the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, and I don't know who he is. Do I really belong here as an analyst? Like, that's what was going through my head. How do I not know who this player is? They're talking him up big time. And I'm just sitting there like, how do I get out of this? So I just started bringing up Jake Ferguson, who just, you know, started booming on the scene that year with the Dallas Cowboys. And I was a big fan of him. I was a big fan of his game. So I just kept going back to, hey, what about Jake Ferguson? You know, they're going to be a good tandem, but I really like Jake Ferguson. I don't know how he's going to take his job. So that's part of the play as being an analyst, is kind of BSing your way through when you need to BS your way through. And if you can do that, then, you know, you're sitting in pretty good hands. And am I going to get the guys back? I would probably say no. You know, that was kind of my rookie, you know, initiation, you know, into the crew. And they're too experienced. They got too many years, you know, underneath their belt. I mean, Michael Strahan is the second youngest one there, and he's been part of the crew for 15, 16 years now. So I don't think I can come up with a prank to get him back. But if one does present itself, then possibly, but we'll see.
What does being on such a widespread platform like Fox NFL Sunday do for your other businesses? Does that open new doors, create new opportunities?
Definitely. Because while you're playing the game of football, you're always wearing a helmet, you know? And that's why sometimes, you know, companies and brands stay away from you, because people don't know your face. And now being on TV, you know, people see your face on a daily basis and they know what you look like. So now brands love that. Companies love that, because now they can utilize you, you know, and present you and market you, because now everyone's seeing your face. There was one, you know, huge thing that I've learned that they said about Shaq. The people that throw my Gronk beach parties throw Shaq's Funhouse. And Shaq's Funhouse was going on before I even threw my Gronk beach parties. And the people that at Medium Rare that represent Shaq for the Shaq's Funhouse, they told me with Shaq, hey, you know, all the companies and brands stayed away from Shaq when he retired from the game of basketball. Even though, you know, he doesn't have the helmet on or anything, he was such a well-known name, they're like, well, there's nothing else left. And then the second he signed, you know, on the NBA show with TNT, they said it just took off like they'd never seen it take off before. And you don't really notice that when you're playing the game. And you really get more airtime on TV, not from playing the game of football, but from being a broadcaster or an analyst before the game, which is pretty crazy to me. I didn't really notice that until I started getting into it. And then people see your face all over the place. You don't even have to be a football fan, and someone's scrolling through the channel. They're like, oh, I saw you. I'm not even a fan, but I saw you. I was just scrolling through the channels, and boom, there you were. Great job. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. So yeah, it takes it to a whole nother level. You know, it makes you abroad, you know, a lot more, you know, being on TV, especially before a football game.
You already do so much. So why are you starting a podcast company? Why does that make sense for the business of Gronk?
Yes. So I've been offered many opportunities, you know, to do podcasts and start my own, but it just didn't make sense. I'm not a guy that likes to sit there and just ramble on what's going on, you know, with politics or the hottest subject that's going on. You know, I like to do my thing. I'm more about action, you know, and doing it, like doing a commercial or going out on the football field and playing in the game or representing a company. More action, but the less talk. But I went on Julian Edelman's podcast, Games with Names, and we just hit it off. We had a great conversation about the, you know, Super Bowl 49, my first Super Bowl that I won. Actually, here's the ring right here. You know, when we beat the Seattle Seahawks 28-24. We were 15-4 that year. There it is. Do your job, all that good stuff. And we went on and talked about the game, and we had such a great time, and we had so much chemistry. And that episode kind of blew up, you know, for his podcast, Games with Names. And then his team presented to me, hey, you guys were great. You know, Rob, how about you do a podcast with Julian? The Nut House is what produces it all, and they do such a great job. It's a production company, and just the way that everything was set up, you know, to perfection when I went on to podcast with Julian, I was like, hey, I think I can do this. And like, it's easy, you know, like everything's all set for me. You know, all the information is presented to us the day before. We have a little meeting to go over everything that we're going to talk about. You know, I just show up, sit down, and we just start going at it. So when I noticed that it was going to be, you know, kind of that simple compared to what I thought it was going to be like, I hopped on that opportunity, and to be with someone like Julian who takes half the load, and I take the other half, and it's not all on our, our backs. Just it's not the whole show on me.
Yeah.
I thought it was the right opportunity, and that's why I got into it.
So where do you see your future going? Do you want to be someone who diversifies more? Do you want to focus on a specific area of what you're already doing? What's next here?
I really like what I'm doing. I still have a lot of time on my hands, doing the broadcasting career, and then also representing a couple big name brands out there as well. And you do a couple appearances for them. You do the shoot, which takes only like 2 days out of the whole year. You do it all at once. So I got plenty of time on my hands. And where I really want to take it to the next level is through my investments, big time. And that's where I learned, hey, I'm representing this company. I'm making this company all this money. And that's always going to be there, and the right, ambassador situations for me will always present itself, and I'll probably always take them. But I was like, hey, I want to be part of companies now where I make investments, represent them, and then the outcome is 20 times as much as me just representing a company that's already established on a daily basis. So now I got a couple investments out there, that are started from the ground up, that are blossoming now. They're a few years in, and they just keep going to another level every single year.
Any you can name?
Yes, Green Lane is my biggest one, no doubt about that. I'm invested into Green Lane with Chris Birch. He's our main investor. He started Tory Birch back in the day. Very successful businessman. And then the two people we got running it are a married couple, Judd and Erica, and they already run 160 fast food chains. So they're very successful in that industry. And Green Lane is a fast food, market, but it's not fast food. It's healthy, quick service restaurant food. And that's where I see myself leaning towards more in the future, are the investments that I'm a part of. Anavive, which is a pet company for valley fever shots for dogs. I put a good chunk of money into that, which is a great product. Dylan, the CEO, is doing such a great job, and there's just so much FDA approval that has to go on. Yeah. And I got a dog, love my dog, and that's how I got into it as well. And a couple companies as well, instead of taking money up front, hey, I see the big return in the future, so give me some stock, you don't even have to pay me, give me some stock so you can keep all the money running in the business. Yeah. And hopefully that stock can just take off like a rocket, in 5-6 years. Yeah. So I'm tending to learn the niches to really hit big, in the long run.
92 touchdowns, nearly 9,300 yards, 4 Super Bowls, great blocker. Are you the best tight end ever play the game? Are we going to see a gold jacket on your shoulders anytime soon?
Yes, hopefully we see that gold jacket on me. Like I said, in the football world, if you tend to get a big head and you think things are going to come your way, well then, boom, you get chopped right down. You get humbled right away. So a lot of people tell me first ballot Hall of Famer, there's no doubt about it. I just say, hey, if I get into the Hall of Fame, that's one accomplishment that I never thought was going to happen, that I never imagined, just growing up as a kid. I imagined myself getting to the NFL, no doubt about that. I told my friends, my family, I'm going to make it to the NFL, but I didn't see it, in the foreseeable future of a possible Hall of Fame. I mean, that would be an honor. I'll definitely have tears, going down my eyes. I'm choking up a little bit right now. That would just be one of the coolest things ever, to be just enshrined into the, Football Hall of Fame.
Rob Gronkowski, thank you for being here with us.
Hey, thank you for having me here. It's been a pleasure.